Call the meeting to order at 7. And now I ask everybody to rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And our next item is to approval of the agenda.
I so move. Chairman,
Yes,
I would
Louis.
like to add an item to the agenda that we discussed this enhancement to the reinvestment, or reinvigorating the right words of the comp plan.
So an update on the potential comprehensive plan
Yes, I'd like to
Okay.
discuss that after all the,
after the last docket.
yes.
So before we adjourn, I'll put that as 6.5, okay? So an update on the comprehensive plan, does that sound all right?
I think you gotta go 5.9 or something.
Oh, yeah, 5.9 or 5.5. Thank you. Is that okay? Do I have a motion then with his addition?
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. So it was Eugene
Now,
and John. Yeah,
I'll move that we approve the agenda with the amendment.
yes, and that's the way I took that. Because I
Okay.
had him, and then you seconded it. Because before he did it before I had his second,
Yeah,
all right? Now, approval of the minutes from February 20th, 2025. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Eugene got the second. Any discussion? Otherwise, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Hearing none, all in favor. And then we'll move on to our petitions. I want you all to note there's amendments that have been added to every petition, and they should be in your manual, okay? Some of you got updates on your email. I just didn't know if you had a chance to get there, okay?
Now, are the amendments in red or?
I haven't really looked there. I don't think they are,
Oh,
They are on the agenda, but
but not in the information packet, all right? And well,
in here they are,
they're included and they're in red to let you know there's
Yeah,
more
the
material.
pages on the agenda.
oh, okay.
So it's page 6, just for example, the first one is page 16 and 35. And I think our staff probably covered that quite well when we get there.
All right.
All right. So our first petition is, I'm looking for the number for it. I got it back in my agenda. It's PC 0320-2501. And this is to consider a petition from Greg and Brandy Gomez, who seeking a conditional interim use permit regarding the following. And that is to allow a new short-term animal boarding facility and pursuant of Winona County zoning ordinance, chapter 10.4.6-14 and 10.4.6-27. And who do we have in charge of that? All right.
Good evening.
So we're going to have Olivia do that. Go ahead.
So the first thing I want to point out to you is the sections of the ordinance that were cited for this project. At the last county board meeting, the county board did vote to amend the zoning ordinance related to dog kennels, specifically to commercial breeders. However, this petition came forward before that, so it's noticed under dog kennels and other similar uses. You'll notice that it is not having to do with commercial breeding. It's more of a daycare overnight facility. Just to put that on the table ahead of time. So a little bit about the site location. It is in Hillsdale Township, section 19. It's along County Road 25 there. You can see in the aerial image. On the west side, it's about 3 acres, and there is an existing residence and a couple of accessory structures.
Well, yeah, just a
Yep.
point of order here.
Sure.
I see on the printed one here, it's 10.46, it's 26, and there it's 14. You know, if that
I
makes
have
it-
a new modification of that based on what Olivia is telling you
Yes, okay.
to adjust.
Okay, just so it's,
And that's because of the ban and how we had to change our ordinance.
yeah, okay.
Okay,
I just noticed there was a difference.
so
Is
the
it-
one I quoted second is the
You
current one.
quoted it, she's presenting it, here it says 26. It's like 14.
So the agenda, the to allow section on the agenda talks about an accessory dwelling unit. That's incorrect. What Chairman Flynn stated and what was at the beginning of this slide is correct for what it is noticed in the project that it is. Thank you for pointing that out, though. So this is a very basic site plan showing what their proposal is. They'd be using the existing driveway that services the house to lead down to a parking area, and then there would be about a 5,000 square foot indoor facility with outdoor runs on the east side of it. These are some of the plans that the petitioner provided. So you can see there on the right, the new building is in the southwest corner of the property with parking to the north, and then 3 outdoor runs that you'll see in some pictures later. On the left, there's the schematic from their builder that they're proposing. Some of the project overview, when looking at kind of the full operational capacity, they'd be looking at about 40 dogs and 15 cats as their average animals, although they do talk about having the ability to care for other animals as needed, depending on the customers. The indoor facility, like I mentioned, is proposed to connect directly to those outdoor runs. So instead of having to, walk animals on leashes, they could just open up the doors and let them in and out. And then their business plan is highlighted in the packet. They provided information on some of the customer, like business plans and hours and things like that. Some of the site considerations itself. So it is in the Ag Resource Conservation Zoning District. The existing access is off of County Road 25. Dave Kramer, a highway engineer, did review it and didn't see any concerns with using that existing access or the increase in use of County Road 25. There are 5 residents that I mentioned in the staff report as being within about 1,500 feet of the property. And then this next slide here can show you. So the residents are marked with red X's, and then the Gomels property is outlined in red there. There's also a feedlot to the south that sees a decent amount of traffic as well, utilizing that road. One thing to note, outside of the zoning ordinance, we do have a barking dog ordinance that the sheriff's department is in charge of enforcing, so I wanted to just highlight that here. The way that they measure whether or not the barking is substantive is with 100 feet. So if you're within 100 feet of the property line where the dog is barking, then these standards would come into play. And you can read them there. A lot of other counties go off of decibel or like how loud it is. This is more of a time if you're within that range of 100 feet. So some of the site photos, when you're looking at the picture on the right there, you can see that the mowed path in the grass there, it's maybe a little bit hard to see with the lights, but those are where the outdoor runs are. So you can kind of see the rectangles there. And then the tree area with some of the vehicles in it is where that facility and parking area would be on their property. So I was standing on County Road 25 looking towards their property, looking west. This is looking southeast on the property, looking out towards where the run area is being proposed. This is looking at the new building area. Like I said, there are some things there now, but it's an area that's already flattened on the property and historically has had some old farm buildings way back. This is looking the other direction, looking northeast towards the facility and parking area, and then the land slopes down as you go towards County Road 25, which is where they're proposing those outdoor runs. So utilizing this existing driveway, Both of these are from the road looking opposite directions. You can see one of the residences that's closest to the site. In the photo to the left there, it's that black building, a newer build. Hillsdale Township heard the petitioner on February 10th. They did indicate support for the request and provided written comment that's included below. So our recommendation would be that you consider all materials and testimony before making findings that support your decision. The packet was amended to include a neighbor letter, so take that into consideration. It should be towards the end of the materials that were originally submitted. We did do the analysis and draft findings to support granting the permit as an interim use instead of a conditional use, with the identifiable end date for that interim use being if the property were to transfer to someone other than the current owners. And should you decide to approve the petition, we have drafted 4 conditions for your consideration, which are included in your packets. Any questions?
Yeah, this kennel or whatever we want to call it, building,
Yep,
that's going to be a permanent building, right?
correct.
How can we call it interim use if it's a permanent building?
Sure. So the way we went about it is with the last kennel facility that was approved. It was approved as an interim use just due to the nature of the business. And if the business were to change hands in the future, having those new people come back to the planning commission and to the county board to ensure that those conditions in the business plans have not changed. So they would come back to reapply essentially.
Okay.
Do you know what the setback is from County Road 25 there?
There's not a setback for the fences. I believe for a structure, I think I have it in the staff report. I want to say 130 feet. Any other questions for me? Otherwise, the petitioner's here as well.
Do you know the maximum numbers for any of the other boarding facilities in the county?
None that I saw had maximum numbers. So all of our kennel permits that we issued for breeding facilities, most of them outside of 3 of the older ones had maximums. I don't believe any of the short-term facilities have maximums. I did speak with the Board of Animal Health as well, just to check in to make sure that there weren't any other state requirements that came with boarding facilities, and they confirmed that there weren't anything from the state's perspective that they would be required to do, although the petitioner has stated that they intend to follow the kennel guidance through their program. So even though it's not a requirement, they still want their kennel to meet those standards that the animal program has to meet. Anything else for me?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I have the petitioners come up and speak on behalf of your project? That would be Greg and Brandy come on. Thanks, Greg. State your name and address.
Greg Gomels, 19793 County Road 25.
And tell us what you know.
What I know,
Well, maybe be here all night. Tell us about your facility proposal.
we're just looking to utilize our property, and since it's kind of a small hobby farm-ish type property, we're looking at putting up a dog daycare and boarding facility to manage as a business for being at home most of the time and working there.
Any questions?
What's your experience with dogs and cats that on this type of situation? Have you did something like this similar before? Or
Yeah, I currently have 7 dogs and 2 cats.
you have experience?
Yes.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yep.
In terms of like what your optimum business plan is, are you focused more on the daycare aspect of it, meaning that you'll have vehicle traffic on the daily coming in and out, or are you focused more on that boarding overnight?
Boarding overnight.
Okay. With that, knowing that you're going to have like some, perhaps, you get people charged by the hour or something, someone's dropping off a dog before work and picking them up after. Do you, and again, it's probably on here, it's just maybe not as a parent, you have like a reception area where the dogs that you have aren't interacting with dogs coming in and out, like there's,
Yes.
okay, so it sounds like it's a pretty professional setup. That's really the only question I had.
We are also offering pickup and drop off to eliminate some of the traffic.
Sure, that makes sense. That was my only question. Thank you.
Yep.
Being that this is a business proposal, will you have any employees? Or will you and your wife handle it all?
If we were, it would be future and in growth. If it became larger than what we could handle.
Okay. Any other questions?
I guess then following on that, do you have, from what we're seeing here on the site plan, can you like maybe indicate where your parking might be?
It's
In front of it, right, this whole section here.
Oh, I'm sorry, and that is, it's pretty obvious on this drawing. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Thank you, Craig.
That's it?
Yep. Thank
Okay.
you.
Motion to open the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Alternate.
I think Jordan got ahead of you, Eugene. All in favor of opening a public meeting, say aye. All those opposed of opening public meeting, say nay. So all in favor. So the public meeting is open. If you have anything to say for or against this petition, please come to the microphone, state your name and address.
Sure. So Amber Braun, 19740 County Road 25, Winona, Minnesota. And before, I guess, we talk about any of our concerns or recommendations, I do want to make it clear that we aren't looking to oppose the permit. I think something that's very important to us and part of what we love about Winona County is being able to have land that you can pursue different business opportunities or enjoyment opportunities or those kind of things. But the different things that are included in your meeting packet and some informational bits that I have here are just to help make sure that everything's nicely managed. So as was mentioned in some other counties, in a situation like this, there would be some sort of regulation or ordinance relating to decibels. So just kind of giving a little bit of a like more black and white of what is a manageable noise level versus not so much. In Winona County, we don't have that. And really the only like enforcement backing, if there were to ever be a problem, is the barking ordinance, which goes from so the 100 feet from the property line that the dogs are at. And it just in my experience of being out in our land area, there's not a lot of structure to block noise. So we hear, like if I'm going on a walk, I can hear the trains in Lewiston. It's, the noise travels pretty long distances out there. So I just wouldn't want to see it have to get to a point where we're having to potentially, call and say, hey, it's getting out of hand. Living out in the country, there's farm dogs everywhere and there's farm cats. And I'd like to think that we're pretty tolerable for that. One of my jobs growing up was helping to train hunting dogs. I love dogs. I'll, roll around on the ground with them, all those things. But just making sure that, and I think on the map you can't see our house, but in the pictures you can. So all of that hard work of building a house, which the Gommels, they put in their hard work to have their house over there too and whatever. So just making sure that the health and welfare of everybody is being considered in this. So again, not looking to oppose the permit, but when we got the letter in the mail just letting us know that the permit was being pursued, all it really said is the type of facility that was maybe, going to be going up, and not much else information other than that, and just kind of told us how to get in contact with the different staff and respective people that we would have to, convey any concerns. And so a couple days after that, we were really we didn't know what the appropriate amount of concern was. Again, our initial thoughts was, great, small business, we love country living. The Gamos have their other dogs that they're not much of a noise problem or anything. So, and from what we've observed, they're happy, treated well. So no concern in that regard. And the Gamos have been great neighbors, all those good things. So just really looking to, minimize any potential conflict. And so I started gathering some different information just so we could be strategic in that approach and have all the information that we could have. And part of that was making some phone calls to other similar facilities in Winona County. So I guess I'm not sure what page it's on in your amended packet because it was sent in on Tuesday.
35.
Okay.
in our packet.
Forward, yeah, onward,
Sure.
rather.
So there's a little bit of information about different decibel levels and just kind of to compare. I think when we get to the recommendation portion of potentially asking that the maximum amount of dogs be set at a certain point, we would definitely hope that there could then be capacity for other animals, not minimizing the profit of the business. But just with the size of the, the 3-ish acres is just pretty small in comparison to some of the other available land that these other boarding facilities do have to help accommodate, arrange where their facility is. There's lots of trees and structures on those other bits of land, which is not present out in our area. So just looking at those, talking to some of those owners and then some of those staff of those businesses, as I made those phone calls, I made sure to let those people know right away, hey, here is the purpose for my information gathering, just so they weren't caught off guard or nothing was being sneaky or anything like that. And just gave them the situation of us being about 600 feet away. And the common reaction was, you're how close? And there's how many dogs? So that's when our concerns started to rise, which we didn't really, like I said, didn't have right away. And that's when I started getting some of the information together on the decibels. And then they also gave some recommendations for managing noise. So, the operational dog daycare, that heading, there's some information about, most of them don't have a residence that's within half a mile. And then one of them does have a residence that's within a quarter mile that has structures and trees in between. And that particular neighbor, they've just kind of worked different things out where they tell them, hey, we're having a get together outside. Can you keep the dogs inside? Or, that kind of thing. So I think that there's definitely a lot of room to just get things worked out. In Winona County specifically, there's just not a lot of regulation. These type of facilities, as was said, aren't regulated by the state or federal government or anything. So if there's any opportunity to get some good guidelines so that everybody's on the same page moving forward, this is that opportunity. So, yeah. I guess I don't need to go and read everything in there. I tried to keep it short. Yeah, yep.
Yes,
So,
included in it.
yeah. Are there any questions related to that information? Otherwise, I can go to the recommendations that we had to be considered. So 600 feet from where I think the permanent structure is going to go up, or from the, I guess I don't know, 600 feet from, okay, which is, I think it's like 0.1 miles, something. So if there's no questions on the other information that was provided as far as the more factual based information, which is 2 of those pages, and then, which is like just labeled under section 1. And then section 2 is consideration and concerns. So that's more of just, not necessarily factual, but just concerns that we had, things that we were thinking about. And then section 3 is the modification recommendations. So that would be the recommendation of having a capacity of 25 to 30 dogs. And part of the reason of bringing this up so early is that if that capacity was set for dogs, as in like some of the research that is cited, it's usually recommended that there's 1 person to every 10-ish dogs, just to keep them nice and content. And when you have a lot of different dogs that are different personalities in a different area, and with being so close to County Road 25, we're in between a couple family farms, so they're constantly, you know, ATV, tractor, different things. So just being able to manage the dogs well, and then moving the outdoor run potentially. So the way that it's set up right now, the indoor building is, I believe, steel siding or some sort of metal something. And those outdoor runs are, some of those are right against that. So if there was an opportunity for some of that sound to go in a different direction, it's then redirected or ricocheted directly towards the other residences. So there's already not, like, distance isn't in our favor, structures in the way aren't in our favor, and then there's a structure that could potentially be amplifying some of that sound in our direction. And there are some different areas with some mature trees on the property. They are not as close to the indoor facility, but I wondered if we could be a little bit like creative in having some space back there for the dogs to be able to go to and still be able to run straight out of that facility back into that area. And then, yeah, measures to dampen noise for both people hearing the dogs and then what the dogs can hear or see to limit episodes of reactions as a result of the stimulus. So in some of that different information related to sound and noise and decibels and what's too high and those kind of things, really something that came up was how the change in decibels is really what can be impactful on health. So if you're in a loud room and something loud happens, that's not as alarming. But if it's pretty quiet out there, which is great. But then when you have something like a big roar of dogs coming, out, that's moving from whatever, that 30 or ish decibel range. And then with the distance considered, that could be more to like I think it was like the 70 decibel range. So that's just a really large jump, and that's alarming. And what the body does is says stress. And so that is that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions? The coyotes around?
There are lots of coyotes around. Yeah.
Okay, we'll ask questions later.
Okay. That sounds good. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak for or against this petition? Please come to the microphone, state your name and address. Is there anybody else wishing to speak for or against this petition? Please come to the microphone, state your name and address. Okay, for a third time. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against this petition? Please come to the microphone and state your name and address.
I move to close the public hearing.
Do we have a second? And Louis seconds it. All in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Hearing none, all in favor. Okay, we've heard our staff, the petitioner, and another person speaking against or at least having concerns about the petition. Commission, what's your thoughts? What do you wish to do?
Could we have the petitioner back at us and see if they've got anything for mitigating the sound?
I think that's a fair question. So if Mr. Gahn will come up here, I have a couple questions for you too. But Louis, you go first.
Have you thought of anything to mitigate sound effects towards that property?
Yes, we do plan on planting trees and shrubs and stuff like that in the lower area that we would like to have the runs. And we can also take in consideration of having the run up in the mature tree area also. It is an option, just wasn't one of our first options. But,
I could make one suggestion.
okay,
My son and I bought some cattle panels that are solid, like for windbreaks.
yep,
Maybe been by my place, you could probably see them. Maybe you could find something similar like that would be a temporary way to deflect your sound if you had to.
yeah.
It's an idea.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna look into options for noise reduction, because that was one of our concerns also. But I know the pasture that we want to have them run in is all open right now. It does fall in a valley, so in the lowest part, the road is above, so it's kind of a berm or whatever there.
There's another thing in there too. If you've got coyotes running around, they also create noise too.
Yeah,
Your building you're proposing now, it's a steel, looks like a steel structure.
yep,
Is it insulated?
yes,
So that insulation should help if you have a problematic dog
yep,
to secure them in the facility rather than
outside, yep,
outside. I mean, I'm just stating what I read in here.
Yep.
As possible options.
and we're also looking at other siding options than steel. So,
Okay.
the wood siding would,
Be even more insulating.
yeah, and it would absorb the sound a little better too.
No, if I read things right in my booklet for the rest of the commission, I'm on page 30. In full occupation at 40 dogs, 15 cats. During your day hours, 10 to 30 dogs, correct? Between the hours of 6 and 4, is that correct?
Yeah, roughly, yes,
And then overnight, you would have a potential of maybe 10 to 20
yes,
overnight. Now, overnight, you would probably have those inside,
yes.
okay?
Yeah, all border dogs or daily daycare dogs would have their own separate kennel.
And I saw that in your plan there.
Yes.
to Keep them separate. Any other questions for Greg? Eugene?
I guess it was at least partially answered by your question, Mike, but, yeah, I can't see that noise is going to be a major problem because you're gonna have less animals in the evening and they're gonna be all inside.
Yeah,
So I can't foresee that unless you get some real coon hounds or something in there, that you're gonna have a lot of problems with noise.
Okay, any other questions or statements? Thank you, Greg.
Close the public hearing.
We already did. It's up to you commissioners to decide what you want to do. If you need more information from the staff
Yeah.
or the petitioner. And then we have the findings of fact, recommendations to it.
Oh, I got
Those I find on page 17 to 19. Yes, Jane.
Under the recommendations, its staff recommends the planning commission review all materials and testimony. And, number 4 is the one I got the question about.
This is a recommendation.
Yeah, it's the petitioner receives an approved development certificate and septic system permit. Now, is that in the plan, Olivia, or?
Both of those come if this were to be approved. So that's the next step. Both of those are issued administratively. So the development certificate is the zoning permit that we issue if this were to be approved. And then they would have a separate septic system for this facility, which they would apply for after this.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other comments?
How do we handle this, noise situation sitting in here? I mean, the way it sounds like it's settled, but if it becomes a problem, could there be a condition sitting in there that they should address it? If it,
You certainly could add that, Louis, as a
I
condition.
think we should add a condition.
So you want to add a number 5?
I'd like to add a number 5, if the barking or whatever becomes excessive, that they manage it or do what they need to,
So a noise thing?
something like that,
And,
yeah.
and our public meeting, there were some parameters on decibels and stuff. Do you want to refer to that?
That would be a way to prefer, but remember, we're 600 feet.
Because if you just say a noise thing, you're not really
Yeah, I
defining it.
understand. You gotta be
Okay.
a little more specific with that.
Another option would be to allow staff, county staff to decide whether or not it's
Mm-hmm.
Well,
excessive.
I mean, I want to take concern of the people that are next to them. I mean, they do have a valid concern about having dogs barking all the time too, but the gentleman's trying to do the kennel right, and he would fix it within a proper length of time. I assume he would do that, and I hate to put anything in regulation to force them to do anything that you shouldn't have to do. Common sense would say, but sometimes you're
Right.
better off to be a little bit, on the ball or proactive.
So do you want the staff to manage the noise
That
potential?
would probably be the proper, if
Well,
it gets.
Olivia, come back and tell us your thoughts on that.
Just one comment. So the existing ordinance framework that we have doesn't necessarily deal with decibels. It deals with length of time of barking. So I had a map up there that showed 100 feet from that property line. And if there were violations of that amount of time, so I think it's 15 minutes overnight of constant barking or 30 minutes during the daytime, if that is found, it would be considered a public nuisance. So if you want to use something related to that, potentially saying if there's repeat offenses of that ordinance 36, that could be a potential solution
So
for
if I
you.
hear you right, that's already in our ordinance.
Correct.
Okay, so we wouldn't necessarily have to add that.
We wouldn't have to add a condition then.
If they were in violation of that ordinance, then there would be, I think fines, yeah, actions, right? Okay.
Get a chance to mitigate it before.
And we can pull that up again if you'd like to read that language.
Is like, it can't be perceptible beyond that 100-foot buffer, or how, what's that 100-foot that we're talking about?
Yeah, so we'll pull it up again.
Is there about 600 feet?
Okay.
So the language reads essentially, if you are 100 feet away, let me get over there. So A3 reads repeated incidences of barking or crying by a dog regardless of length, which can be heard by a person other than the owner within 100 feet of the property line on which the dog is being kept. So that dashed line there shows you that 100-foot distance from all sides of that property. So what that's saying is if you're 100 feet away from that property line and you can hear these instances, then this ordinance would apply. And C talks about the violations and the punishments associated.
I would say if you could hear it at all, it would be more restrictive than a decibel measurement.
Well, I think that's more detailed than trying to do the decibel.
Yeah, I mean,
And my point is that I'm trying to flush out here. We already have an ordinance.
yeah.
And if they're in violation, then all the rest of this goes under anyway.
Well, so Louis, is your intent to
My intent
Get the
is.
staff involved before the sheriff's department?
Well, my intent is to not turn around and give them a fine writ, give them some chance
Well, it
to
says in
mitigate the situation before.
violation, the first time you just get a warning.
Sometimes you get the warning the next damn day sitting around there too, if you know what I'm getting. I mean, sometimes it takes a time to get the mitigation.
Well, yeah,
Yeah, but having two of the same thing doesn't mean you're going to get a response any faster.
Right.
Okay, it's already stated clearly in our ordinance. And if we state everything that's in our ordinance, we'll have 5 pages of stuff, all right? And then we won't cover half of it. But this makes me aware of the noise thing, which I was unaware of earlier, that this is already in our zoning.
Just,
And it's already, corrective action can be taken.
so it's not in our zoning ordinance though. So this is a separate ordinance of the county that's enforced by the sheriff's office.
Okay, but it's there. So
Correct.
we have the tool. to-
Correct. Yep.
So there, if there is a problematic dog, it gives the owners of the warning gives the owners an opportunity to deal with the owner of the dog and say, this dog is causing us
Can be
problems.
boarded at my place.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's not,
And be
the dogs are not
volunteer-led.
living there.
Or as he stated, it probably would not be allowed to be out in the runs. It'd have to be
Right,
inside.
yeah.
You would keep it in.
Different options, yeah.
Did I hear you right on that?
There's also indoor runs.
Sure.
So if there's a problem animal, then
But in this case, the problem dog, the owners can say, I'm sorry, your dog is not doing what we needed to do, and you're no longer allowed to bring him to our boarding place. I mean, that to me is how this would be solved.
Mhm. Great.
I could put through all my conditions, so it's covered one place or the other then.
I think it's covered through the sheriff's. Yeah. Thank you, Olivia.
Well, then I'd move the permit with the findings of facts.
And the conditions, right? Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Shep seconds it. Any other discussion before we vote? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, hearing none, 7-0. And you still will have a county board. You'll meet with the county board on Tuesday, April 8th at 9 a.m. So what you got here is just a recommendation from us that isn't favorable to your project, but it would be up to county board for the final say. Okay, and again, that's April 8th at 9 a.m. and it's in this room. It's Tuesday. Okay, thank you. And our next petition is docket PC 03-20-25-02. That's to consider a petition from Beth Turner and Aaron Jeffson, who is seeking a conditional interim use permit regarding the following: to allow a land disturbance activity on steep slopes for the purpose of building an accessory road to a proposed building site and pursuant of Winona County's ordinance, chapter 11.6.1. Okay, Lewis, it's yours.
This will be mine. Good evening. I'll run through some slides and feel free to ask if you have any questions. The location of this petition is south of Pickwick on Cedar Ridge Drive in Homer Township, section 23. This petition was before the Board of Adjustment in 2023 for building development on a bluff between the toe and the top of a bluff, and that variance was granted. They're back today because they're looking at moving forward with the project, and there is a disturbance of slopes between 18 and 25%. So there's a trigger for a conditional use permit, and then they were also over a threshold for a standard for the bluff that required a variance. So I just wanted to, it's for the same feature though, so it's still the driveway that we're talking about today. think I'll start back on this map actually and just kind of point out the location of the driveway is on the left of the aerial photo where there's a big curve at the top of the bluff. So it's going from just below the top of the bluff back up to the top. And you'll see that here on that curve as you come down the Cedar Ridge Road. The proposed driveway would be off to the left and then rise about 60 feet to the farm field or pasture hayfield on top of the bluff. And you can see here the proposed residential structure that would be built in relation to that. Here's a few of the proposed amenities or erosion control structures that would be incorporated into the driveway. A couple of culverts are proposed and a culvert pond to slow down the water as it comes through and keep it from eroding the slope below. Silt fence would be below the driveway and the disturbed area. And erosion control blanket would be on the upper slopes above the driveway that are disturbed. There are a couple of sections that I wanted to point out that are the steepest along the driveway grade. And they're towards the upper portion of the driveway before it tops out on the farm field. Here's a cross section of the proposed driveway showing silt fence to the right, of the filled slope below the driveway, gravel of the finished drive, and then breaker rock underneath. And then showing a swale above on the upslope side of the driveway. And then the cross section of the culvert to the left there. So here's a topographic map showing the thicker lines are 10-foot contours, the thinner ones are 2-foot contours. So you can get an idea of the rise that the driveway will take over the course of its length. And then the elevation profile, again, it equals about 60 feet from the beginning of the driveway to the top of the bluff. This is a cross section. Hopefully you can see it. There's a red dashed line that's a straight line through the middle. That would be the proposed driveway. And then the black line, you can see that undulates a little bit along the course of the driveway. And that's the actual contour. So that will give you an idea of the type of grading and filling that would need to happen in order to create the driveway that they're proposing. The driveway and the county standard is that it's less than 12% grade of the surface of the driveway. So that's what they're shooting for, is below that 12% grade, finished grade of the driveway. And so that's where they'll have a nice steady about 11.5%, 11.9% grade, just below that 12%. That would be created out of that undulating contour. Some site considerations. Parcel consists of 136.4 acres. Most of that is wooded. The upper portion where the house is pasture or hayfield. And we'll have some pictures of that so you can get an idea of what that looks like. They did, I think there was a lot of conversation when it was before the Board of Adjustment regarding alternate locations for the driveway and alternate access. That would come from the neighbor's house, and it was discussed to share the driveway and then split this driveway off near the neighbor's home and head across the top, and that would reduce the need for this driveway and all the land alteration. That ultimately wasn't going to work. They couldn't work anything out between the two neighbors. So this is really the best case scenario for locating a driveway given the conditions on site. The building site is located on the least steep area of the property. That is true. That is surrounded by steep slopes on the, I guess it would be the east and the north side of the property. And as you go down the slope on Cedar Ridge Road. Petitioners have stated proposed driveway will maintain a consistent grade of 11.9%, less than the 12% required. The disturbance is estimated to be around 963 cubic yards. I just wanted to point out that the staff analysis and findings are for a conditional use permit. Your staff report might indicate in one place interim use permit, but this is really a permanent driveway, a permanent feature that would be on the land, so we would consider it a conditional use permit and not a temporary use. We do have a few photos to give you an idea of what it looks like, and these are some older ones. The ones with the leaf on, obviously, are from the Board of Adjustment packet from a few years ago. They were taken in the summer. And we'll have some that will have leaf off conditions as well. This is from the base where the beginning of the driveway would start. And you can see the top through the trees there. Here's just from last week or a couple weeks ago during leaf off conditions and no snow, so you can see well through the woods, but it's from roughly the same location as the previous photo. It's again the driveway access where it would come off of Cedar Ridge Drive. And then further up, away from the access point, up in the woods a little further, and give you an idea of what the lay of the land looks like there. Here is a photo of the kind of from the neighbor's property line on top of the bluff, looking out towards the proposed building site. So on the map to the left where it says property line, you'd be the picture would be taken from that direction heading towards the proposed building site there. Again, kind of from the proposed building site looking back towards the neighbor's property. Township has considered the request and indicated support at their February 20th meeting. And as always, you consider all materials and testimony. Staff analysis and draft findings are to support granting the conditional use permit. And there are 5 conditions for consideration. That's all that I have. I'll back it up to one of the maps just for reference. Are there any questions for me?
No questions?
It's stated that the estimated excavated amount of dirt is 963 cubic yards. What happens if 37 yards isn't too far from 1,000?
Right. What if it goes over because there's a trigger for the 1,000 cubic yards for a conditional use permit,
We
right?
just argued about that.
Right. And so there is an exemption in the in Chapter 6 that would not require a conditional use permit if another permit like this one was being considered for the same thing. So in this case, since there's already a variance and a conditional use permit being considered for the driveway, you wouldn't need to have another permit like a grading filling permit or another conditional use permit if it goes over. But the bottom line is that still would require an erosion control plan, which we have. I think this body is capable of looking at that as part of this process. So, wouldn't necessarily need to worry about that since we're here considering it today.
Lou, am I correct that Cedar Point Road is a township road? It's a public road of some sort?
Correct.
So what's the difficulty in establishing the drive there then? if it's a public road, why is the neighbor conflicted on where establishing it here on the,
It would be, so, what they were considering before, is, so, there's Cedar Point Road, you maybe see on the map. So Cedar Point Road, is, it
That's
shows as
Cedar
the,
Ridge Road.
right, so this is coming off of Cedar Ridge Road, this proposal. What was considered before was Cedar Point Road, and that actually follows the neighbor's driveway. And it's never been actually established as a public road by the township, so the township doesn't maintain it. And so there were conversations with the township about providing access and with the neighbors about that. The road actually comes right next to the neighbor's house. So like to open that up would actually bring public traffic like within like 10, 20 feet of the neighbor's home. So that was considered, and it was kind of abandoned as an idea. Nobody was really in favor of that, but the petitioner might have more information on those conversations than I do.
I'm curious if retooling Cedar Point Road is a lesser variance than, and that's not our concern here necessarily, but carving through the bluff with a new road as opposed to just reconfiguring an existing public road.
Yeah, that was considered in depth, I think, during the variance. You have some comments, Jordan?
We talked about that a lot at that Board of Adjustment meeting, and being that Cedar Point Road is completely on the neighbor's property, I believe the conclusion we had was that they would still need some kind of easement to come from that road across just a little bit of the neighbor's property to access their property. And like Lou said, the neighbor didn't want all that traffic going right by their house, so they were not willing to consider an easement for that.
But with how it's drawn, it would also provide access to that northmost parcel. That's it's just off from the bound that we're seeing there, which say someone bought that north parcel, they would have to let, you can't have a landlocked parcel if you have a public road that can service it. So what's the difference then if it, and again, this is conjecture and this is sometime down the road, that north parcel would have to be serviced by Cedar Point Road anyway.
Not necessarily. They could deny that.
But it's a public road, so they can't.
No, it's
Not
not.
Cedar Point Road is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Cedar Point is not a
It's not-
public road.
But that doesn't necessarily mean it's not a public road.
It is platted, but the township has not opened it. And so, yeah, there is some legal, if somebody wanted to push that, it'd be a issue for attorneys to
Absolutely.
discuss.
Just because the township doesn't want to pick up the responsibility of providing service to it, doesn't necessarily mean it's a private road. It just means it's kind of in a gray area of who maintains it and how do you do that. And that's the agreement between all parties that occupy that road. I just think I wasn't on the discussion. I'm sure this is the least variance approach.
It might be plotted, but it doesn't mean it's an active road.
Sure.
So the township would not have to assume that responsibility.
And it would be right not to. It sounds like a different.
Well, you have to bring it up to grade, and there's a lot of things that come into issue there.
Yeah.
Louis.
If I remember my little law, what I know about it, but if there was 3 residences back on the road, the township can be forced to take it over if the people build it up to grade. So, I mean, let's let this dog lay and let these people decide
Right.
their own problem. It's not our forte to get into it.
But most townships won't accept a road unless it's 4 rods, and I would put it right in their living room.
You said 4 rods?
4 rods.
That's 66 times 4, whatever that is.
It'd be 66 feet.
Oh, I see.
66
Okay.
feet. But this brushes right up to that house.
Makes sense.
So the house would be right on the right of way.
I see that.
Marcia had a question that I'm supposed to ask since she's not here.
I thought she was on,
Is this proposed driveway going to be of adequate width and everything so that emergency vehicles can get up it without problems? Because she said, in this topography, that's a real bone, and we've got enough reasons to have emergency medical vehicles be abandoned and not be able to get people to man them. So let's not make a bigger problem out of the one we already got.
Right, and so the emergency services it's up to them how they feel the conditions are when they're responding. So we did adopt driveway standards that we're trying to get at that very thing, to make sure that access is safe and able to be accessed by emergency vehicles, deliveries, and others. And that's where the 12% grade was adopted, and there's a minimum width as well as the requirement for turnarounds if the driveway is over 300 feet. And so there would be need for some sort of a turnaround that meets the zoning ordinance, Chapter 9. So there are standards that are supposed to ensure that, there's a better chance of safe access. That said, emergency vehicles, depending on the conditions, they do make that decision, in the
Well,
moment.
I understand that part too.
But yeah, the standards that we have, the 12% grade for the surface of the driveway, the minimum width that we have in the ordinance, and then the turnarounds were all to address that issue.
That's all in this.
It's in the zoning ordinance and would be required.
It's stated that they have the permit holder, if it gets granted, would have to abide by them.
They would have to abide by it anyways as part of the zoning ordinance, and would be part of our review for the development certificate of
Okay,
the.
okay,
and that's condition 4 back.
okay.
Any other questions, Lou?
Oh, did you say that there were 5 conditions or just these 4?
Well, let's look again
I
here.
have 4.
I see 4 as well. And
What page?
Well, number 50, yeah, there's 56 too, was another. And that 56 addresses a steep slope.
I'd also point out that SWC has reviewed and has comments in your packet as well, and did not have, has some suggestions that were talked over with the property owners, and it's our understanding that they would incorporate into the plan. So yes, there are 4 conditions.
thank you.
Thank you, Lou.
You bet.
Could I have the petitioners come forth? Beth or Aaron, or both of you?
Me.
Yep, state your name and address.
My name is Beth Turner, and the address, is 3301 26th Street South, La Crosse, Wisconsin.
Thank you.
The one thing I wanted to point out, if you guys want to go to 72 on your binder, this is the additional requirements that we talked with Soil and Water to adding in some additional culverts. And then also calling out the geotextile fabric for erosion control on the upslope of the driveway. And Shep, if I may address your question that was, even though it was discussed in the previous, I'm just going to go and point.
Please.
So if you're actually physically here, this actually runs through their house. So it's one of those where, when we talked about it during the am I saying it right, Appropriations Board?
Board of Adjustment.
Board of Adjustments, excuse me, Board of Adjustments, is that the plat hasn't been updated in over 100 years. And so technically their house is running through the road.
Oh, I
And so,
see.
and then to get the easement, we had to drive in their front, right in front of their driveway, not in their front of driveway, in their front yard. So that's why we didn't go that route.
It makes sense, absolutely. It's just,
So it's one of those where it looks great on the map.
Yeah.
And then when we tried it, then we found out that we pretty much run over their house.
I understand. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Because yes, I would love that as an option, to be honest. But yeah, it just, the map, the plat is out of date, and then to have to drive in front of their front yard is a little tough. But yeah, so we added with the page 72, we added 2 additional culverts, more towards the top of the driveway, and then again, just called out the geotextile fabric for erosion control. And as mentioned by Lou, meeting the width requirements as well as having the turnarounds at the top and the bottom of the driveways, or driveway, excuse me. Any additional questions?
Questions for?
Yeah, do you have any intention, like, so this is 92 acres, was it?
136.
Okay, much bigger. Are you planning on maintaining all of it? I see that there's a kind of a northern area, you know, the
Yep.
long-term plan isn't to like split that off.
No.
So that we're back to the same concern of how does that get serviced?
No, I mean, granted, nobody knows the future. However, we have also the top field in CRP, and then I put all of the forest into managed forest land as well.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so the plan is to just keep it as residential. There's no plans to farm it, do anything along those lines. And we like the idea of having CRP, and both of those fields currently are CRP. At the end of this year, the renewal is supposed to expect to go through, and we'll just do another renewal for another 10 years.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ben.
You're welcome, thank you.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Shep, second. All in favor, say aye. Opening public hearing.
Aye.
Nay, if you're opposed. Hearing none, all in favor of the public hearing. Anybody wishing to speak for or against this petition, please come to the mic, state your name and your address and your concerns. Ain't nobody, anybody wishing to speak for or against this petition, please come to the mic and state your name and address. Okay, for the third time, anybody wishing to speak for or against this petition, please come to the mic, state your name and address. Seeing nobody,
Motion to close.
I'll second it.
all in favor to close public hearing, say aye. Aye. Opposed to not closing it, say nay. Hearing none, we're all in favor of closing the public hearing. Okay, commissioners, what is your wishes?
I know we'll go over the facts and findings.
Is there a second of the motion?
Second.
Okay, any discussion before we vote?
I just want to say that I went out and visited the site, you know, a couple of years ago, and we had this at the Board of Adjustment, and we spent a long time trying to figure out other better alternatives or if they existed, and unfortunately, I don't think they do. But I do think this is the best point you could possibly access the township road for this driveway, and it gets steeper as you go downhill. And it looked like it was the best option, although it wasn't the one that I don't think even the landowners would have preferred, but that's what we have to deal with.
And Jordan, do you mean that from like, even if they went through like the most legally fraught approach of rededicating a road and resurfacing? I mean, I don't know what the expense is, and we can be European about it and not, you know, have to discuss the money matter. But I'm shocked that the approach that we're looking at here is less thoughtful in the long term than any other.
Yeah, I think it's just because
I mean, yeah, we're
the
looking at
neighbors were not willing to give up access through their property, so it kind of just eliminated that entirely, unfortunately.
Yeah, I guess that's enough to kill it. All right.
Well,
Yeah.
speaking for the neighbor, I would be the same position as the neighbor.
Well, I mean, if I was the neighbor, I would say, all right, take this road and put it on your land. Dedicate it on your side.
But
We have
That slope doesn't allow that.
they can't move the road that far because
No,
they're still
the
running
slopes
into the
wouldn't allow
woods.
that.
They have to try to do the road where that one is now, the driveway,
Sure.
to reposition that more, as you look at it, more to the right, put you right down in the woods again and some problems.
You're back to the same problem.
I'm gonna have to defer to people that have actually been on site.
Because I think they toiled with that for 2 years now, trying, because
Yeah, and I
they
mean,
passed the Board of Adjustments in 23.
yeah, no,
So there's been a lot of heads put together here. And as you saw from your documentation, a lot of consultants in soil and water and so on and so forth. Because they really have a detailed plan of how they're going to build it, right down to what kind of grass they're going to put in.
Pretty short culvert size. Oh,
And they did look into the access road being so emergency can get there. That's that limited 12%. Their maximum is 10.9 as I read it.
11.9.
Or 11.9, thank you. And that's stated in here. And to try to change the grades differently would require an enormous amount of earth moving. So with that said, though, we have a motion and a second to, with the findings of fact and the conditions, to recommend this to the county board. Is that correct, Louis? Yes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those not in favor, say nay.
Nay.
Okay, so we're 6-1. I voted in favor. Clarify that. So your next time with the county board is Tuesday, April 8th at 9 a.m. Okay? Now, our next petition is docket PC 03-20-25-03. And this is to consider a petition from Clearcrest Farms who are seeking to amend an existing conditional use permit, number 1232, regarding the following: to allow modifications to existing animal feedlot that results in a feedlot in excess of 300 animals units pursuant to chapter 8.4.6.2 and chapter 10.4.6.1 of the Winona County Ordinance. Change also to permit liquid manure storage area and location and design. With that said, take it away for me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a mouthful there. I'm glad you covered that for me. Before I start, I'd like to introduce Brian Berfume, the new feedlot officer for Winona County. This being a feedlot request, in the future, you'll likely be seeing
Can
Brian.
you stand up? The rest of the commission hasn't seen you. All right. Can you repeat your name again? Because I'm
Brian Berfume.
Brian. All right, thank you.
Okay, so this is an amendment of an existing conditional use permit, which many of you probably have seen before, but some of you perhaps not. Action on it, if it fails, it reverts back to what was previously approved in 2017. So you're not considering this project from anew, you're considering the changes from what was previously approved. So the summary here, first we'll cover the existing conditional use permit, that's CUP 1232, and then we'll cover the amendments, and they consist of the changes to the liquid manure storage area design, changes to the proposed location, and then an increase in animal units. Here is the existing conditional use permit, and it is to construct and I'm not going to go through all the sizes here, but to construct a milking parlor, a smaller liquid manure storage facility, two larger ones. The prior design was for a two-stage pit, so it would first go into a settling pit, and then it would go to a larger storage pit. And then there are additions to 3 barns on here, and they increased the animal units at that time to 921.4 animal units. So that's what he has right now. Here's the locations of and the various things I just covered. The pink locations there are the previously approved pit locations. And I want to clarify, when I say previously approved, what I mean by that is the conditional use permit for those facilities were approved. In addition to that, before one could construct, they would need both a feedlot permit and a development certificate. Those permits were not sought or issued, but the conditional use permit is still valid. Then in red there you see the proposed new location for the pit. And that's scale drawn, so the sizes are representative of what's actually being proposed. Same information, just seen in a 3D view. Pretty flat ground out there, but you see some variation in the landscape. You note that kind of in the upper center, you see a lightish blue colored area. That's a mapped wetland. So the old facility was proposed in a location which might have had some challenges in terms of the wetland for construction. This is from the design that came forward and was approved in 17. And that's that two-stage pit again. You see the smaller, more square feature first, and then going to the larger rectangular feature. As I noted before, the initial, the first one, the smaller square, that was proposed to be concrete. The larger structure, that was proposed to be a synthetic liner. These are not actual on-site facilities, these are just examples, but that is an example of a concrete manure storage area. And that is an example of a synthetic lined manure storage area. So the requested design changes. So the original, the two-stage design, as I said, with an estimated capacity of 15.5 million gallons. Now being proposed is a single concrete storage area with a capacity of 11.25 million gallons. Amendment as it relates to change of location. So the new facility is proposed approximately 100 feet south and slightly to the east of the previously proposed location. We look at that in the context of required setbacks from dwellings. The yellow circles represent 1,000-foot setbacks from existing dwellings. And I'll note that there is a right there that does not have a buffer added to it because it is occupied by the operator of the feedlot. And in addition, it is already within the encroached setback area from this particular feedlot, and the feedlot expansion is proposed to the east, so further away. It's not getting any closer to that house than it previously was. Going to cover some things here related to karst, as the new location being proposed would have perhaps a different impact on the karst. So here you're seeing the cross section from the proposed pit, with the bottom of the pit being proposed at, I'm squinting here, 12,036.5 feet, and the bedrock estimated at 12,020.8 feet. So this separation distance of about 15.5 feet. Here you're seeing the same farmstead with the karst map on it. So you see sinkholes mapped all around the vicinity of the proposed location. And there's one you'll see that's mapped right smack dab in the middle of the farmstead. And we'll spend some time talking about that one. This is a similar map. It's not quite as zoomed out, and this was prepared by the engineer who did the karst evaluation for the design of this project. And you'll see on the map, the different features are labeled Fs and Es. So F1 is the feature that showed up on the karst map that was right in the middle of the farmstead. And this is an excerpt from the karst report, and it describes what they found at F1. And I guess I'm going to read this in. So this is a feature that had previously been disputed by the landowner and subsequently excavated in the past and was found to be a buried carcass or carcasses from the farm operation. I personally spoke with the former NRCS district conservationist, Mr. Mark Kuntz, on March 4th of 2025, and he attested to the fact he was on site when the excavation took place and the dead animal remains were exposed. He specifically recalls the incredible pungent smell of the rotting animal. The remains were reburied, and then it provides the approximate ground elevation where that excavation occurred. And this is correspondence related to that same feature, that F1. And this is an email sent on March 17th from that prior conservationist, Mark Kuntz, to Pete Fryer, the engineer who did the karst evaluation. And he says, this email is in response to your request for information relative to a site inspection I was part of approximately 20 years ago as a USDA NRCS district conservationist in Winona County, Minnesota. I'm going by memory here, but Jack Miller had a possible sinkhole in his building site. as located on the Winona County sinkhole map. According to the Miller family, the alleged sinkhole site was actually a spot where they had buried a dead cow years prior. The site was excavated by backhoe and no evidence of karst geology was found. Subsoil excavated was dark colored and had very nasty smell. Consensus at that point was that the site was not a sinkhole, which concurs with your inspection we discussed. And then finally, another piece of correspondence, and this time it is from, again, the engineer who conducted the karst investigation report, Pete Fryer, and this is to the applicant. And he writes, Rob, I received this from Mark Kuntz this morning. Mark is referring to feature F1 from my karst investigation. This is for your files and for the county and PCA if they need additional documentation to have the feature marked as F1 from my karst investigation removed from the karst inventory. Okay, so spent a lot of time on F1. Don't want to beat a dead horse or cow. Nothing. Okay. So moving down to F2, that's the other one. I'm going to zoom way back up so we can see it on the map again. F2 is within that half-mile radius. That circles a half mile from the proposed pit location. F2 there, just below I believe that's a township road. F2. So this is a feature sinkhole that was shown on the existing karst map. No evidence of a low in this location at the time of the site investigation on March 3rd of 25. Specifically investigated this area for evidence, none found. And again, this is taken from the karst investigation report. And then the E's. And again, I'm going to zoom back up. A lot of E's just north of the proposed site noted in the karst investigation. So the E's, no sinkholes, depressional areas, or karst features. And that's just a general statement about the entire half-mile survey he did. But then he goes on to talk about the E's. And he says, I did, however, identify several interesting features that are described for this investigation so that the features are not interpreted later at some point in error. I will refer to them as E features and are shown on the Transect 1,000-foot map. Any questions on any of this karst investigation that I've covered so far, or if any arise while I'm in the midst of the presentation, please interject. Okay, I'll keep going here. So this map shows the initial karst survey, and each of those black dots, there's 17 of them, those represent backhoe pits that were dug. Transitioning now to Winona County's regulatory role. This is language from the Winona County ordinance that allows for a discretionary option for an additional karst investigation. Initially, there was some miscommunication between the design engineers and the engineer who did the karst investigation, and that the design engineers took his report and interpreted it to mean that additional investigation was needed. That was subsequently clarified, and in that report, this page and the work that this page depicts was actually the additional investigation work that the Pete Fryer, the engineer who did the karst investigation, took it upon himself to do. So after reviewing the backhoe pits and doing his initial investigation, he then went and walked each of those lines to survey for karst. So in your initial staff reports, there may have been some reference to perhaps a need for additional investigation. We, in the time between when those were provided to you and today, we clarified with the engineers involved that they feel that they have done this is above and beyond what would have normally happened in a standard karst investigation, and they both feel that this is a satisfactory and additional geotechs or geotechnical investigation. Please.
You got 1260 on that slide?
Yes.
Feet. Now, is that standard footage or not?
I don't know with confidence the answer to that. I can tell you that the feedlot specs key off of 1,000 feet. So you get we'll get into a soil, or maybe we won't get into it in my presentation, but in your packets, you might have seen mention a soil collapse risk factor. And those numbers are arrived at based on the numbers of karst features, sinkholes within 1,000 feet of the proposal. So in this case, 1260 at a half mile, he's going slightly beyond where that regulatory distance, but I don't know if that's the standard or that just happens to be what he did in this case. That's why they hire an engineer to do it.
Okay, okay.
So this is correspondence between myself and the project design engineer, the firm that actually designed the pit. And they were the firm that initially suggested to us that we needed to do an additional investigation. So here it starts on the top, and she's telling me that I'm correct on both accounts. And I pose two questions down there, and I say, is it MSA's position that no additional karst investigation is needed? And she replies, correct. No additional karst investigation is required, as Peter Fryer has completed this already. And those are those transit walks. And then I ask, viewing figure 2 is guidance. Figure 2 is a MPCA guidance figure that is associated with assigning risk to a project. Is the project as designed appropriate in the proposed location based on the professional experience and judgment of MSA's engineers? And she replies, yes, the design project is appropriate for the proposed location. And this was sent the 17th, so very recently. That's everything I had on karst. Any questions on karst before we jump forward? All right. Animal units. Conditional use permit from 2017 placed an animal unit ceiling of 921.4 animal units on that site. They are requesting to increase that ceiling to 988.6 animal units, and that would consist of 699 dairy cows and 50 dairy calves. Some additional information that was in your packets, and I'll cover here too. So 2009, a conditional use permit was issued by the township when the township was the zoning authority for that location for a larger animal unit number, 998. As far as I'm aware, that conditional use permit is still in effect. They're not asking for action on that conditional use permit here today, though. They're asking for action on conditional use permit 1232, which has a different animal cap ceiling. In 2017, as I said, they registered the CUP placed them at 921.4. The site was then registered in August of 2021 at 921.4. Then in September 21, a feedlot inspection occurred, and on it, it noted that they were registered at 990.6 animal units on March of 2020, but we were unable to locate any record of the registration, and it was never put in the state database, so we believe that may have been a typo of sorts. Questions on animal units?
Yeah. We have discussed this many, 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 many times. When you issue a CUP, like I live in Warren Township, and if Warren Township, like you stated, issued them a CUP for 998 animal units, that's grandfathered in from every aspect I ever saw before.
I wouldn't disagree with you. I wouldn't use the phrase grandfathered in. I would say that it's still a valid conditional use permit. We don't have a lot of information related to that. We did find the actual permit, but in terms of what the proposal was, it's a fairly thin file, thin as in one sheet.
Well, we just had one guy working on it.
Yeah, no, I guess I would not dispute that it's perhaps a valid conditional use permit, but again, we're here because they applied to amend a different conditional use permit. I'm just putting that up there because it is a relevant fact. So zoning, it's in the ag district all around it. Ordinance pathway, I'm not going to read all this, but this is how you would arrive at, someone being able to do what they're proposing to do in that location. I will note that, Gene, to your point, assuming that higher animal unit CUP is still active, we've got language that it requires a a conditional use permit for any change in operation. So they would arguably still need to come in to propose a different style of pit or propose a pit from no pit.
Yeah, I understand that.
More ordinance pathway. Site characteristics. So Warren Township, this happens to transcend two different parcels, not an ideal situation, but in this particular site, it looks like a situation that has been allowed in the past because the parcel line goes right through the barn. It's off of County Road 25, and it's a rural setting. Here's a slope map. Yellow means flat, pretty flat out there. Permitting history, so that was in your packets. It's limited to the permitting actions that are relevant to feedlots or involve feedlots. It was extensive. It is not presented as comprehensive. No comments on this other than from the township, and their comment was simply checking the box that they support the application. And final thoughts. Again, they're asking to amend it. They're not asking to permit a manure storage facility. They're asking to change a previously authorized design and location. Should the amendment be approved, they would then seek a construction short form. I'll note here that I'm calling out one of the conditions that we're placing on there, and that is that language. And we're proposing a condition that reads that the county shall not issue a feedlot permit for the construction of the LMSA until MPCA has completed a review of the LSMA design and verified that all applicable design standards are satisfied. It is a bit of a complex design. It has transfer of manure among existing pits. It's probably above the pay grade for zoning staff here to go through that design and make sure it's all met. But we've spoken with PCA about it, and they're willing to assist us with that review. In addition to the feedlot permit, they would also need a development certificate. Same guidance as always, review all the material and testimony. You've got an analysis from staff, and you've got draft findings from the attorney's office. And should you move to recommend approval, you've got proposed conditions as well. Anything for me?
I have a question.
Yeah.
As these structures are extending past the property line, I mean, they own both parcels, correct? That they're going to be footprinted on?
Correct. Common ownership, yes.
Okay. So I guess my question is, are we able to permit something to come into existence and immediately be legally non-conforming?
Well, great question. I have sought guidance on whether a property line setback or an area, for that matter, should be calculated on a per parcel basis or based on the outermost boundaries of all commonly owned parcels since my arrival here, and yet to receive it. I will tell you that in the other counties I've been in, La Crosse County did not do it cumulatively. They did it on the parcel basis. In Houston County, we did it cumulatively. So if somebody owned a 40 and needed to split off 5 acres so a bank would loan them money to build a house, we wouldn't say that the house is on 5 acres. We would afford them the acreage they needed to build in that district. Here, I come across examples of it being done both ways, but it really should be something it's not clearly articulated in the ordinance. Perhaps it ought to be, or if not that, it should be clearly laid out in a policy of some sort so we do it consistently.
It's not in the ordinance. All right, great.
Any other questions for Aaron?
Yeah.
A lot of reference to karst ground underneath there. The pit is actually smaller than what he currently has. Is that right? And it's going to be cement rather than a combination.
Nearly right. So he doesn't currently have the other pit. He's looking to change the design for a pit that was approved as part of a conditional use permit, but never constructed.
Okay.
but you are correct that the,
This new proposal should be safer for storage, I would think.
it is a concrete pit, there's no liner, and it is a less volume than the two before, yes.
I'm sorry, so to summarize your question, that was whether it would hold it on that terrain?
No,
Better model now with a cement pit rather than a textile one that was actually planned to be a bigger holding tank. You know, the new proposal is actually a safer
And
proposal, I
karst.
would think, for the sinkholes and karst ground.
I mean, that's probably a subjective thing and that I wouldn't, but in terms of your answer and capacity, it appears to have less capacity. And in terms of the answer to, synthetic liner versus concrete, it is concrete. The old approval was for synthetic.
Anything else? Thank you, Aaron.
You're welcome.
Can I have the petitioners come up, state your case? State your name and address. Then
You want my living address or the facility address?
I would say your living address because we want to
Okay.
know where you're from.
All right, Rob Miller. I live at 26747 Rush Creek Road, which is about 2 miles west of there. And then one thing to note also on the new engineering specs, we, by moving it there, we also have considerably greater bedrock setback. So according to the engineering specs, we now are actually exceed CAFO specs for the bedrock separation,
We define that, CAFOs?
concentrated animal feedlot operation.
Thank you.
So even though we are not a CAFO site yet, we are already meeting the more stringent standards. So we just decided that we felt it was safer to go with full concrete instead of the liner. We've known there's been some issues with some synthetic liners. There've been some technical issues. And then it also moves it further away from property lines.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question, just in terms of what was previously approved, so like kind of that fuchsia area.
Yes,
How long ago was that approved, as
2017.
2017, and it just, through the specs, it just didn't make sense to go forward with?
No, actually, right after we got those designs made, there was a anaerobic digester company that was potentially coming into the county, and we decided to hold off to see if that was a viable option, and through the course of the years, that option became non-relevant, so we decided to revisit the pit. The pit specs, if we would have been with a digester, would be slightly different. That's why we didn't want to build a pit and then have to modify it immediately. So we decided to hold off.
Louis, you had a question.
Is how often you gotta have, or how much volume?
With our current animal units, this one should hold 14 months. This way, because the new MPCA recommendations, they're not statutes yet, they're not ordinances. They basically want manure, what they're trying to eliminate wintertime spreading. So, but they also want to do with nitrate issues, they want to have it so that manure application windows fall after November 15th and before freeze up. Because otherwise, if you put manure on the ground earlier than that and the ground temperatures are above 50 degrees, the biological activity turn the nitrogen which is in manure, which is an ammoniated form, into nitrates. And because nitrates have a negative charge, along with soil having a negative charge, that's why nitrates leach. So by delaying the application, so what we're trying to do is basically get ahead of those, because they've been trying to get those for several years, and this summer is a new proposal time for the MPCA. So they are going to be proposed again. They don't know if they're going to be enacted into law or whatever you want to call it. But like I say, we just wanted to have things set up so that we didn't have to modify or do things anytime soon.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Gene.
I don't know if this is a question you can answer, Rob, but if we give you a amended CUP, then you would be grandfathered in, so you wouldn't have to worry about that, right?
You know, I don't know how the logistics of that occur at the county level, but,
Okay,
you
I can
know,
ask Steve.
yeah.
Would there be any reason you wouldn't want the CUP animal unit number to match the one from 2007 or the one that Warren Township approved for 998?
For 998. Just if you go over 700 cows, it automatically triggers the CAFO. And with the animal or the calf units that we have there, that's where the number comes to.
Okay, so that's the number you.
Yeah.
Plus, we're amending 1232, if I remember that number. And that would be back further. So we're going back to a baseline.
Okay.
You know, so, but basically with this design, we're trying to increase the environmental safeguards. You know, and that was one of the things that we were trying to do.
Just to confirm it, as I
Yes.
read through your proposal, I see you're going to use a drag line for application.
That is our intentions, yes. Only thing that would stop that would be, you know, equipment, time, availability, but that is our desire, yes. And we are also, trying to do that to eliminate traffic on the roads.
You did?
Now, I can understand that for the land you own and operate within reasonable proximity. But
Yes,
I understand that you own part of Pulley's farm.
Yep.
You have Luther Ulrich's farm.
Yep.
You're gonna have to haul that in transports?
we do not currently spread manure over on the Pulley farm.
Oh, okay.
And the majority of our land base is within 2-mile radius, which is definitely doable by dragline. The acreage that we are required to meet our manure management plan is close enough that we can dragline most of it.
Okay.
So there may be a farm like over by my brother Luke's that we would haul some, but it would be a small percentage of the manure in the pit.
Yeah, I understand, but
Any other questions, Rob? Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it.
If you have any more questions, just feel free to ask. All right, thank you. Thank you very much for your consideration on this project.
Motion to open the public meeting.
I so move.
All second.
All righty, all in favor of opening public meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Hearing none, we're all in favor of opening public meeting. Anybody wishing to speak for or against this petition, please come to the microphone. State your name and your address. Anybody wishing to speak for or against this petition, come to the podium and state your name and your address. For the third time, anybody wishing to speak for or against this petition, please come to the microphone and state your name and address. Seeing no one?
Move to
Motion,
close to the public hearing.
is there a second? And Lou, you seconded. All in favor of closing public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It's so moved. You, all in favor. Okay, commissioners. What do you want to do? This is an amendment to, okay, what exists.
I guess I have, the way I understand it from what's been presented and all the talk, this is just for the CUP, right? Then there's two other steps that we don't have anything to do with before they can actually start to build this, right?
Well, they have other agencies they need to go through, that is correct.
Okay.
Yep, and some of,
This is just for the CUP.
for the amendment of the CUP.
Yep, okay.
1232, I believe, is the one we're amending, to allow them to switch from what was formerly there to a new site.
Yep.
I'd move approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Make
Have a-
sure you mention the findings of fact and,
Well, yeah, and I'll go over that. We have a motion and a second, and that is to accept the findings of fact as well as the, in this case, 5 conditions. Correct, Louis?
Yep.
Yes, sir. Any discussion before we vote? This is to recommend the amendment to their CUP they have. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Hearing none, all in favor. And your next hearing then would be for the county board, Tuesday, April 8th at 9 a.m. Thank you. Now, we amended our agenda to discuss the new comprehensive plan. Louis, you brought that up, but we all know that that's in the works. And Lou, I'm going to call upon you to tell us what you know, and then the commissioner is going to ask you questions.
Sure, I can give a little background and then we can just open it up to kind of informal conversation. But I was before you, I can't quite remember exactly when, but last fall, to let you know that we were starting to consider planning for the comprehensive plan. We had put together a request for proposals that was open in October and into November. And then as the county evaluated those proposals and around, just after the holidays, we're before the county board to discuss proposals and the project. And then brought forward a selection for county board approval in February. And a consultant was contracted with at the end of February. They are SRF Consulting Group out of, they have offices in Madison and Minneapolis. But they were the top scoring proposal out of 8. So we had good responses for for that request for proposal. And we're happy to welcome SRF on board and looking forward to working with them over the course of the project, which should last probably a solid year. 12 to 14 months is the projected time frame. I can also tell you that there will be a steering committee established, which is appointed by the county board, and which is going to be on the county board's agenda on next Tuesday, for consideration. They're going to be looking at the process and makeup of the board and try to come to consensus on that. And then we'll move forward with what's being proposed, which is a application process similar to the rest of our committees here at the county, where people could apply. We're thinking that it'd be open for a month. And then we'd bring it back to the county board to make actual appointments based on the slate that they agree to next week. With that time frame, if everything goes as planned and we're able to get a steering committee appointed in May, then we could potentially have first steering committee meeting in June. But I guess these dates are they're targets. They're not written in stone. They're subject to change. But that's the current proposal. So. I guess that's all I have for the update at this time, but if you have questions, I'm happy to discuss.
How long does it take to get that done?
The whole planning process? Like I said, 12 to 14 months is what we're projecting. Those processes can go can go really quick. I haven't seen one go shorter than what's projected, but sometimes they do go a bit longer depending on the process.
Jordan, you had a question.
Is the makeup of that steering committee something that's yet to be decided, or is there framework already in place for that?
There's a framework proposed to go to the county board on Tuesday. It's in, I don't know if it's been released yet. I guess I haven't gotten the email, but it comes out in the county board agenda packet. And so you'll be able to see, there's just 2 pages. And honestly, if you wanted to see, I could share it with
Is
you
that
tonight. but-
something that staff put together, or is that part of the consulting?
We put it together as a team.
Okay.
Yep. But essentially, it's looking at, makeup of the steering committee would be, we're looking for somebody from 1 or 2 members from the county board, 1 or 2 members from planning commission, board of adjustment, members from agricultural community in the county, members from township representation, some municipal representation. Again, all this is, and then some at-large members that can, for just Joe Public to be able to apply and also be placed. We're looking somewhere around 15 people to be on the steering committee. We don't want to get too big because it becomes harder to manage. I think Mike can talk to that based on his experience at the 2014 update. But it is up to the county board, and so they do hold that decision-making power, so.
Louis?
Anybody gonna be from any industry around here, job market or something on that order?
We don't have one specifically called out, but that would be a great, that'd be great to have somebody from that. Same with banking, we don't have anything, actually set aside for financial institutions, but if there was somebody who wanted to apply, there's at-large positions, and the county board is able to look at it and be like, hey, we've got some really good candidates that we want to make room for, and they can adjust that slate, so.
My question is, why do we hire consultants to do something like here? When there's a body of probably 12 people that sit within the county, look for a whole hell of a lot less money. Spending consultants unless somebody wants to cover it.
Who would be sitting to do it for a lot less money? The planning commission?
Not, but I believe last time Mike could probably speak to all that report.
Yeah, I can speak to that. Last time we did it with Ann and Jason, our planning, or our director then. We tried to do it by taking the 2020 or 2010 one, I believe it was. No, it was 2000.
2004, it's 10 years.
Yeah, and we don't always hit that 10-year mark because it carries on. And it's a lot of work out. We're talking about a group of 12 to 15, and last time when I chaired it, we had 23. And it's hard to put a committee of 23 together, have an organized meeting that lasts less than 2 hours. And when you got too many chiefs in there, pretty soon you don't get anything done. Because we're a group of 9. Well, triple that, almost. But we do have extra people come in, the staff's coming in, and there is a outline. I think our current comprehensive plan is about 200 pages. Is that about right? Somewhere in there.
I won't, yeah, I won't argue with you.
We try to make it shorter, but then everybody wants their little bleep in there and stuff, and then pretty soon the pages expand. But the principle behind it is guide the county on where you think we should be, and then you put your ordinances in after that. So what is your vision? What should we be doing? And what isn't working? Because if we can adjust that, why wouldn't we want to do that?
That would be a good topic to sit in there, what is working and what isn't working.
Absolutely, that'll be part of the evaluation.
No, I believe we met 15 times before we got it done, and we didn't meet every month. So there was some gaps in there. Our goal was 12. But, again, with 23 different ideas, it takes a lot more work. And we didn't have perhaps a consultant for kind of tying up some red tape, maybe, if that's what it is. But we know, in my opinion, as a planning commission, wow, we get the solar things coming in and we're like, wow, Wish we had a little more information on that. Where's that going and where's the recycling and, you know, where the lines and things. I'm only using that as one example. The other example I'm going to use here, we see many things that come before us that I really don't think should be conditional use permits. Like we've okayed dwellings in Bass Camp. How many? 3?
Yeah.
Totally templated. We didn't change anything. And what I'm suggesting is make this a little more streamlined. Because I think if we do a good job on the comprehensive plan, and we do a good job on the zoning, the less CUPs you need, the less variances you need, the better. Okay? Because then it's concrete, whoever the applicant is can come in and get business done in an earlier way. Now, there is things that I think should come before a board. I really do. I mean, they're in gray areas, but some that I can recall for Board of Adjustments. Dresbach has sewer problems, so when they sell a dwelling down there, most of them can't put in a full sewer. They have to put in a holding tank, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to go through a variance hearing to know you have to do that. Or
And I think the
CUP.
staff is more than capable of
I
making
do
those
too.
decisions just as well as we can.
And I think if more of this is delegated to our staff, it's gonna make their job easier, okay? Because you see how much volumes of stuff we got here? Now, some of them are required, I'm not saying they're not. But some of the things we do routinely, like a variance on or a conditional use permit on a rural residential dwelling. I think we can change the parameters on that to make it more clear. And we have a housing problem in the county anyway. So why do we put all the walls up? Okay. And we talk a long time about prime ag land. When the site they're looking at has 1.5 acres of potential garden land. And I've told you before, some of you know, I tell you, my brother can't even park his planter and tractor on that. You know, so we're not really preserving ag land because they're not using that for ag land in serious ways. And I live on a farm that's that way. It's a Razorback. It's not your 300 bushel corn. So I only use a couple of examples, and you can think of a lot more things. And this is what this committee should brainstorm. How do we make this realistic, something enforceable, but something that has vision and helps our community and our county grow?
We had 2 instances here that a family owner, a sewer, all the other things met the qualifications. They just wanted to put another relative on the land that was there, and there was a relative before there on that land. But one was at Bouchasco, and I can't remember the other one down the bottom. If it's already been permitted like that for, I don't think it has to come in front of this body. I think you can make a value judgment at staff and say, free.
Housing will be a major focus of the plan. And some of those kind of more flexible housing arrangements, like what you're talking about, might be something to consider.
We got experience, or I have experience on this committee and others that can bring these problems that have been there. Staff can bring them too, where it should be looked at anyway.
We will certainly be leaning on the public. Yeah, well, we'll be certainly leaning on the public. There'll be extensive public engagement, and we'll be back in front of you guys to ask you your opinion as well. And you guys will be the folks that are considering this for a recommendation to the county board for approval. So we want to be checking in with you, making sure that you are aware of what's going on. You get your input and everything, all your ideas incorporated as well as the general public. So there'll be a lot more public engagement this time around than was in 2014, certainly.
And certainly even the committee or the group that they appoint, there will be public input hearings. Not every one, because you've got a work session, but when they get a certain amount done, they'll ask the public for their input as well. Gene, before we adjourn, you had a question.
Yeah, I guess I've just got a general comment. We put this off for 2 years because we didn't have a administrator, and we're in the same boat again. And I don't think, given the overload that the Winona County Planning Commission has, that we should even be considering doing this until we get somebody in a leadership position to direct this.
Like a planning director?
Yeah.
Best laid plans, Gene. I mean, we did our best. We thought we had everything lined up. And, you know, personnel issues happen. We can't control those. But we're going to do the best we can. And I think that with folks in the county, I know Maureen and our supervisors in the Planning and Environmental Service Department are on board and taking an active role. We'll get it done. We'll move it forward.
Shep.
Questions for these comp plans that come in, when we contract that out, is there any like studies done by this firm so they can state like what our housing looks like, or is that done like as a separate thing?
Are there studies that the firm has done?
Yeah,
Or that will like feed into the comp plan?
Right, I want, if we get 15, well-minded people, but if they aren't too terribly aware of what the barometer check is,
Sure.
how can they be making the best plans?
Sure. And so I can share with you the work plan, and that lays out the process, the planning process that we'll be going through. Consultants are already crunching data and collecting information right now, but we'll be looking at housing study that was done here at Winona County just a couple of years ago. That will be part of the data set. There'll be a lot of other sources of information that will be pulled in to create a county profile that will essentially be ready for the steering committee to start learning and get it like processing that data at their first meeting. We will be taking like all of the jurisdictions within the county and reviewing their comprehensive plans and zoning ordinances to see what their plans are for growth and how the county might need to react and what we might need to be aware of when we're making our own plans. So yes, there's a lot of information to synthesize and distill down into during the planning process.
All right, thank you.
Plus, hopefully the staff and the consultant will also use the resources like Goodhue County. They updated theirs 5 years ago. Well, there's probably good points in that. So they'll be researching that because they're a river bluff, similar county. So we have resources out there that we're going to try to bring in as a county that they may be useful, they may not. We'll find out from who's ever on the work group. It might be Ixnay.
Part of the reason that we like these consultants is that they did have a lot of experience with county government and doing comprehensive plans for counties and rural counties, similar to ours. Not all the counties had as much experience, so we are happy to have a firm that hopefully can bring some of that knowledge to bear.
They're out of Minneapolis, St. Paul area, the metro, or?
They have an office in Minneapolis and an office in Madison.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of work ahead and it won't just click your fingers and happen. Like I said, the last one took well over a year.
It could take 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years?
Don't say that. Don't say that.
Whatever.
We all need to move on with our lives too, but
But if you get a serious group and you say, I want to cover this much and then go back and you've had to revisit, so be it. Last time we outlined, what do we want to do the next meeting? So before everybody came, you got mailed what area you want to cover with supporting documentation.
Or think about it.
Right.
Right. So, well, it gives you time to prepare before the meeting because you know what you're going to talk about. And then the sporting documentation might be what agriculture, what businesses, it depends on what part of the comprehensive plan you're working on. But if you're just sitting there looking at the sky going, what's going to happen? And when we did the last one, and I told Lou this earlier, and I chaired it, I limited the meeting to 2 hours. Because after 2 hours, you start deteriorating, you don't get anything done. And when people,
They were pushing.
yes, we're pushing your luck tonight. But what happens is if you go beyond that, then people just feel like they gotta preach to you and you don't get answers or anything positive. So I actually had to put a time limit on people. I said, I'm gonna give you 1 more minute to wrap up your thoughts because other people want to talk about it, okay? So yeah, there's parts of doing it that you bog down and there's parts that you can go through really fast. I mean, they're just different things that are defining our county. So if you break it into pieces, it looks easier. Okay,
Yeah, absolutely.
that makes sense? So think about, I think Lou suggested maybe 2 of you guys want to participate in this, huh?
Think about getting an application in and looking for that to come out. We'll probably reach out to planning commission members as well. So, would love for at least 2 of you to be excited to participate.
The bottom line is the county commissioners will appoint the work group.
County commissioners, that's our proposal to them. Of course, they can, have different ideas. So we'll see what they have to say on Tuesday. I guess last thoughts on that though. I just want to say that we do want to make this is a comprehensive plan for the rural areas of the county. Our zoning ordinance is for the rural areas, unincorporated areas of the county. And so our goal is to make this a grassroots, rural, citizen-driven process. The municipalities, we do need to interact with them and get their feedback, but they all have their own comprehensive plan, their own zoning ordinance. And so this is for the rural areas, and we just really, that's our goal is to make that rural-led and hopefully it's something that people can be proud of and coalesce around at some point.
Well, there is a lot of things that we got to work back and forth with the cities for industrial development jobs.
That's
Because rural feed. And Winona, I know this is a little bit off topic, but Winona's never recognized what the hell it is. It's been a transportation center ever since it was established. King Timber. We have the river here. That river affects agriculture and rural.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, we're integrated both together and that. Love us or hate it.
Yep.
It's integrated and we should be working together is what I'm getting.
And we will. We just want to make sure that, that rural voices are heard and the committee represents people from the unincorporated areas that this, the land use that we're looking at will affect, so.
You do have one hot issue, this nitrogen thing that's going on. And they may sit around and spend a lot of money, but all they're gonna argue over is between 30 and 50 pounds of actual N going on, and how much yield you want projected out of it. Drop it, you may not change the nitrogen levels in the water for 30 years.
Well, anyway, think
But
about
that's
it.
off topic.
Think about it, you guys, because let's say it's 15. We want a well-rounded 15 people that are very diversified, but are knowledgeable in their unique areas. So anyway, it's coming and we'll find out after the county board gives us a little more information on what they want to do. We haven't been invited yet, but to come, right?
We'll be reaching out and we will be checking in with you as well throughout the process and giving updates like this, keep you informed,
So it'll be part of our agenda, as we go, a little update. We won't dwell on it, but we'll work on it. Get informed. I think so. That's my next thing. A motion.
I'd make a motion to.
And Louis, you seconding it?
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.